could not think of a better way to say thank you to all of you folks than to have a program in December, which we don't usually do, but with one of our, if not the most popular speaker that we have, Dick Williams, talking about the subject of one of probably the most popular books that the Historical Society has ever published, Farms and Barns in the town of Kirkland. And if there is anybody in Kirkland that does not need an introduction, it is certainly Dick Williams. So would you all please welcome Dick Williams.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is this microphone working okay? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you. I want to congratulate all of you who braved the weather to come out to hear about farming and barns, which is more of a summer topic, I think, isn't it? In 2008, a committee and I put together a book. Is anybody here from that committee? Yeah, okay. And you were, and we had about 18, 20 people, and they did help me get this all together. So this is really for them. I just did the writing and typed up the whole thing afterwards. And I typed with 3 fingers, so it was quite a chore to me to do that. But the genesis of this little project in 2007 or 8 was that 2 neighboring historical societies, Paris and New Hartford, had done farm books like this, similar to it. And a gal named Janice Riley, some of you may know Janice, she was sort of the spearhead to do those 2 books. And I said, well, we should do that here in Kirkland because our domestic or our rural scenery is going to be fading away pretty soon. And some have already faded away in 2008. So that was the impetus to get this book done. It took us about a year of meetings. And we finally got it done. It's behind me on the table here, and it was also sold back at that time. Now, I must admit, initially, that my memory is going on me a little bit. I'm now 82 years old. This may be my last program. I don't know. But I've forgotten about some of these slides that I took 30 years ago are. So I may say, I think it's this farm, and I may be wrong. So if any of you know the right answer to these, when you see them, I'd appreciate your helping me. I need help. I need assistance for old people. So let's begin. And this first one is of an old barn. I don't know where this is. This is why I don't know where it is. Does anybody recognize this barn?
Rexsteiner Farm.
It's someplace in town of Kirkland.
Rexsteiner's.
What?
It used to be the Rexsteiner Farm.
Rexsteiner up at Fountain?
Up top.
Okay.
Up top,
Thank you very much, Mike. Don't leave. I think you're good. Okay. I had some farming roots too. I've just finished doing a Williams family tree of my grandfather. And this is my grandfather's farm. Does anybody recognize it? It's across the Peck Road on 12B, the Deansboro Road. Oh, yeah. It's now owned by the Brubaker family. They're a Mennonite family. They have the old Claude Hinman farm there. And this is the house across the road as it looked about 1910. All the stuff around the porch is gone. The house has been painted and has actually they've had 2 additions put onto it. But this was my grandfather's farm between 1905 and about 1927 when he died. So I've got some attachments to farming. His barn was next door. Now, it's this. So his barn's a good example of how the farming scenery has changed over the years. And that's not to the good part. Here's one. I need help on this one. I don't know where this was back in 2008. Anybody recognize that? I'm sorry, I don't know where it is. It's someplace in town. Might have been on Martin Road, I'm not sure. This one is over in Kirkland on French Road. I went by the other day. It's all gone. All gone. This was Charlie Dawes' farm over on French Road and Route 5. And there's now it's on the road to the Kirkland Cemetery there. This barn up on the Deansboro Road was last owned by, help me out here, Bill Billingham, right? Billingham. This is the Billingham farm. It's across from the house. There's a house across the road, but this is now gone, completely gone. And Billingham had a farm down on where the elementary school is on Kirkland Ave. Was a Billingham farm back in the 1950s. I used to pick strawberries there as a kid. That whole corner, which is now the elementary school, was a farm. The Billingham farm. This is his son who bought this farm up on Deansboro Road, but this is all gone now. Now, there were two major farmers in this area in the 40s and 50s, Merkwester and Claude Hinman. They both were in the town of Kirkland. This is one of the old Wester farms on Bristol Road. You recognize that?
Oh, yeah, right at the foot of Foot Road.
Across the foot road. Thank you, Frank. And here's another picture of it. And now, if you go over Bristol Road, it's all gone. It's all gone, right? There's nothing there. So this, unfortunately, is sort of the theme that keeps repeating itself with our farms and the barns in the town of Kirkland, because the farming sector has just diminished completely, with two or three exceptions, which I'll talk about later. This is an old farm, at least it's on Reservoir Road, I think. I don't know, it might be Haltner or in that area, I'm not sure. Can you help me on that one?
Was Ernie Hamilton's farm.
Hamilton's, right, next door to Haltner, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Hamilton Farm up on Reservoir Road. And I don't know if the barn still stands, I haven't been by there recently. Here's another farm, I can't recall where this was either, so help me out here. It may still be standing someplace in the town of Kirkland.
Well, they have metal roofs, so the chances of them being
Where?
are better.
I can't hear you.
Both the last slide and this slide, we have metal roof barns, which gives them a longer lifetime.
Okay. Thank you. This one was not very good shape back in 2008, was it? I'm not sure if there was a chicken coop at one time or whatever it was.
Milk house.
Milk house, okay. Here's another old farm that I found someplace in the town of Kirkland. An old barn I made, falling apart, obviously, not too good shape, but it's probably this one here I made. Probably not standing very much right now. This is the whole story, unfortunately, of a lot of old farms in the town of Kirkland. This was a rural community with many farms from the late 1700s to the 1800s and 1900s, but now that's basically an era that's passed. And here's a little map showing the town of Kirkland in case you're wondering what I'm talking about exactly. This is a strange shaped town, it's sort of a semi-trapezoid, and on the top it goes up into Clark Mills there. That little point is up in Clark Mills. And then, of course, the rest of it is, the southern part of the town, it borders the town of Marshall. And then on our east is New Hartford, of course, and on the west is Vernon, and what have you. So this is the town that I restricted my book to just this, anything within these boundaries. So if you say, well, how about that farm up on Valley View? Sorry, I didn't do Valley View. I should have, but I didn't do it. This is the county, the whole county map. Now let's look at some of the statistics here historically to see what a thriving agricultural situation it was back in the 1800s. This is from the 1835 Kirkland census. You may say 1835, how come? Well, the state took censuses, the federal government took censuses on the even years, 2010, 2020, 2030. The state of New York took censuses at the fives for many years in the 1800s. Now, maybe people aren't aware of that, but you can get those on Ancestry and other places if you want to do that. But look how much what they had here back then. They had two tanneries. You know what a tannery is? Where you tan the hides, right? The hemlock tree hides, and all that from the hemlock. And the sawmills, the grist mills, and one cotton factory, a carding machine, a woolen factory, a distillery. I want to find out where that went. I never found out where that was located. And but our total acreage in the town, 19,000 acres in the town. That's pretty big, but not the biggest one in the whole county. What did we raise back then? Well, at the Kirkland Fair, they used to have fairs. Every town, not every town, but Kirkland had a fair every year in the 1600s, 1680s, and so forth. And they had competition for the biggest whatever, you know. And the apples, there were 18 varieties of apples at the Kirkland Fair. Can you imagine that? Today, you go to the store, and I've never heard of half the things, half the varieties they have today. I like a Macintosh. Give me a Macintosh any day. Some of these new ones, they're so hard, my teeth almost break when I take a bite. Now, quinces, I've never had a quince. Well, what's a quince? I don't know, it must be a fruit, obviously, but is it like an apple? I don't know. Nobody uses quinces anymore? Okay. Pears, 10 varieties of pears, that's not bad. Grapes, Concord, and others, squash, turnips, beets, onions, these are all in the contest of the fair. Watermelon, sweet corn, beans, cabbage, pumpkins, citron, and muskmelon. We used to call that, what's the other name for muskmelon? Cantaloupe, right? Yeah, okay. This was another example later on of some data. In 1840, 577 men were involved in farming, or families. Isn't that something? 577. 1830 data, 342 were involved in farming. We have 16 wagon makers. They were the trucks of that period, wagons. 1860 data, 697 horses. Wow. 1,131 working oxen. That's a lot of working oxen. A lot of oxen there. And the calves, sheep a little bit, some swine. They're called pigs, in case you didn't know. And 253 farmers at that time. In 1860, they had wheat, hay, potatoes, apples, butter, and cheese. 1875, 374, 53 acres averaged. 53 acres averaged at that time. In 1940, I don't have any data since then, there were 3,022 cows on 885 farms, and that in just the town of Kirkland. And 11,828 chickens. How's that turn you on, huh? And 2.4 horses per farm. I don't know how they made up that 0.4 horse. And of course, they had raised corn, alfalfa, cabbage. 49 farms sold vegetables at that time. This is a lot of history that has just gone completely. I mean, this is old history. 1954, 146 farms still. Now, what's a farm? I'm not sure what the definition is, so I can't really tell you, but I assume that the USDA probably has some definition. 147 acres. See how the acreage has gone up? The average acreage is up to 147. 130 farms had milk cows at that time. 130 farms had milk cows. That's about 60 years ago, 70 years ago. 97 farms sold cows' milk. 116 kept chickens. 11,000 had chickens on hand. And corn is in almost 2,000 acres of the land in the Kirkland. In 1964, there were 62 active farms. In 1997, the last data year I have, there were 40 farms that sold products, 14 had a dairy, 22 had cattle, 8 had beef, 4 raised sheep, 2 sold Christmas trees. Well, that's appropriate for this time of year, right? And there was an orchard, some had berries and nursery crops, and 23 raised alfalfa and so forth. And 12 kept horses. Okay. Now these are just, the next couple slides are not in Kirkland, but these are just some old pictures I found that show how barns might look when they're, or chicken coops, whatever. This is how a barn might look under construction. Some of the vertical beams there and so forth. Here's some people up on the roof years ago. This is an old picture. This farm, okay, help me out here. This is where on South Street, I think.
Years ago, it used to be the Rashford farm.
Where?
Rashford on South Street.
On South Street.
Louis Rashford.
It's still there, I believe, right?
The barn is still there, but the land has all been sold for houses.
Yeah. This next farm is up on Snowden Hill Road. You ever heard of Snowden Hill Road? That's an unknown road. Nobody ever heard of Snowden Hill Road, right? Anybody heard of Snowden Hill?
No, I've heard it, I've been there,
This farm is still there, right? This barn?
I believe so.
I forgot who the last owner was. Was it, whatever. Now this farm, barn up on Harding Road was the old Harding, or the old Kirkland estate, which then became the Harding estate. This is still there. This is sort of unique. It has the foundation, which you can't really see, is all stone. It's not concrete blocks, it's just a stone foundation, which was very common back then. This next picture is also of an old farm taken from an 1860s map, an atlas, over on Kirkland Ave. James Blackstone was the owner of this farm. He was a prominent farmer at that time. It's over on Kirkland Ave. It was on the side of the Bonzel. Everybody know what the Bonzel farm was on Kirkland Ave? This is how it looked back in the 1850s, so it's obviously very different now, but this was one of the big farms at that time, the Blackstone farm. This one simply is some old barns that's supposed to be up on Skyline, but according to the caption, they're not in very good shape, are they? Notice how that one is leaning a bit to the left. But this is a farm that some of you people may remember. St. Mary's Ave. Today, St. Mary's Ave is full of what? Homes, right? Well, I can't use my pointer, but that, you see where that tree line is up on top there? That's St. Mary's Ave. And you see that big barn just the side of the St. Mary's Ave? Okay. And you can't really see it too well because it's sort of got washed out in the picture, but at the bottom of the picture, there's a house, a two-story, very nice house. You all see that or not? Okay, St. Mary's Ave is still where it was then. That was the Chris Brothers farm, originally the Kilburn farm, up on St. Mary's Ave. And that house that you see in the lower center is the house of Bob and Nancy Graziday, who used to own Day Chevy. The house is still there. But let's just give you a perspective how, Franklin Ave is running left and right this side of the house. St. Mary's Ave is swinging across the top there at an angle. But this was a big dairy. Kilburn had a dairy, then Chris took it over in the late 20s. And it was there until the 1950 period. Right, Zach?
That's right.
And Kilburn lived in the house that now is lived in by the Grazidays. So they could just walk across the backyard there from the house to the barn, right?
Yeah.
All gone, of course. The house is still there, but the farm is all gone. And St. Mary's is all homes now. Excuse me. This was an ad in the paper for Chris Brothers, fresh, rich milk. What else would you want to drink, right? Producing rich, wholesome, nourishing milk is only part of our job and so forth. Cleanliness is highly important. Glad to hear that. Okay, some other barns. This is up on, help me out here, Mike. This is on South Street too, I think. Ziegel?
Yeah.
On South Street, okay, thank you. They're still pretty good shape, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. They were a dairy too up on South Street. Now, does anybody recognize this barn? Shame on you.
I think it's,
This was on, oh, don't tell him, Mike. This was on Kirkland Ave. It was the Alfred Schoon's farm on Kirkland Ave. There's now a big house with the Greek columns in the front. That's where Theo Lafferty used to live. You know Theo Lafferty? This was a big barn behind the Schoon's house on Kirkland Ave, owned by a Schoon's family, Alfred Schoon's. All gone, of course, today. A beautiful barn. This one up on Deansville Road was Bartholomew family. Pat Smith, or some of you knew, lived in the house at one time. The barns have mostly fallen down. Not all of them, but most of them have. The house is still standing. This was the Bartholomew family. Now, this is one of the barns up on between St. Mary's and Chestnut Street. McLaughlin, the house that I call it the Doyle House. It's the house at the end of Chestnut Street on the left before you go down the hill. Okay, you with me? That was built by a Utica textile manufacturer named John McLaughlin. He was a wealthy man, and he also built all these barns in the 1920s, which you can hardly see these barns. You get a better view from St. Mary's. So someday when the leaves are off the trees, go up St. Mary's and just look. This is what you'll see. And he had a dairy called Bonnie Bray Dairy. How's that for a nice Swedish or Scottish name? Bonnie Bray. And he had a dairy there in the 1920s for a while. I'm not sure which barn the cows were up. I've never been in any of these barns, but they're still standing, and they were running for several years as a dairy back in the 20s. Up on College Hill Road, the Crane Farm is still standing, I believe. I went by the other day, it was still there the other day. I understand that the Champions, who I'll talk more about later, store a lot of their young stuff over there now. They have their calves and their cows. Is that true? Anybody know if that's true?
Yes.
That's true. This was a big operation up till, well, when I took this picture, they were, in 2008, they were a going farm. Up on the Deansville Road, this is Harry Converse's old farm. Harry Converse was obviously a farmer, also our state assemblyman at one time, and he was also our town supervisor in the 1950s, Harry Converse. This was his house. It was led off by Dale Champion, and the barn is still there. There's been no cows in that barn for years, but it's still there, and the house is still there. Okay, I'm going too fast. Anybody sleeping? Where's this barn? Help me out. Route 12 by Crown Hill, right?
White Farm.
What's the name, White?
Bill White.
Bill White? Okay, thank you, George. Still there, I believe, I haven't been by recently, okay. And I don't know, he had a dairy at one time, I guess. This farm is, I'm not sure where this was. Is this up on, maybe on Martin Road, maybe? Anybody help me on this one? It may not be standing now, I don't know.
I think it's a Skelzo farm on,
Skelzo Farm?
Street, I think.
Okay. Again, a lot of these farms have disappeared through the years. We took these pictures in 2005, 2006, so this barn is still there. This is not in the town of Kirkland. I'm sorry if I made this rule, I now made the exception. This is the McConnell's farm on Post Street. But they're just over the border, and they basically consider themselves as Clinton people, so I guess they just put a big barn up there. So somebody told me they put a big addition on this, or a big milking parlor or something, I heard. So I haven't been by recently. Okay, where's this? It's up on Brimfield Street. You ever heard of Brimfield Street? Okay, that's the Huffmeister farm barn. And the barn is gone. The little building to the right is an ice house. You are looking at one of the few ice houses remaining in Oneida County. There should be a plaque on it that says this is an ice house. But really, there are very few. There's no windows in that house, that building. If you don't believe me, just walk around it someday and look. There's no windows in it. It's strictly an ice house. They must have a little pond someplace on the property to cut the ice, and they put it in the ice house. Now we're getting to Cosgrove Farm. I took some pictures of Mike Cosgrove's operation back in the 2008 period. Well, those are Holsteins, Mike?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And
That's
that
up on
farm
Farm
has
Street.
been replaced by a new and improved version by,
A new improved version of Holsteins?
well, no, new and improved version of the barn.
We also have chicken coops. I found some chicken coops around the town. This one's in pretty good shape, isn't it? Where is this? Isn't this Bill Robertson's down on
Yes.
Meadow Street? You all know Bill and Susie Roberts, I imagine. Their home was across from McDonald's there down on Meadow Street. And the former owner, or maybe former owners before that, raised chickens back into the 50s. And they're still in pretty good shape, these two old chicken coops. This was up, I think, on Brimfield Street too.
South Street.
South
It's
Street?
no longer there.
Okay, thank you, Ernst. What was the name?
It was on the property that we had on South
Oh, okay.
Street. And we had it taken down in about 2008,
Okay, well,
2010.
there's another chicken farmer up there. We had a big fire there one night. I went to the fire department years ago.
That was the 1970s. And
Okay.
that was on the neighboring property that was owned by the Penzes, Doug and Eileen Penz at the time.
So chickens were big business. Now, this is quite a unique situation.
Yeah.
We had a National Historical Registry plaque up there. This is a 3-story chicken coop. Wow! How about them apples, huh?
A lot of chickens.
This is up the Jones farm up on Brimfield Street. I never knew him, but there were two brothers, I understand. They both went to Hamilton, I believe, and then they raised chickens the rest of their life, so you can figure that out. But this is the Jones farm up on, it's still, the building is still standing. Up on Kellogg, we have this is, I forgot his name now. What was his name? Oh, come on. He ran the cemetery. He was, Bob who? Timian, Bob Timian, thank you, Billy. Bob Timian's chicken coop up on Kellogg, that big curve there just beyond Altera Villa. If you look back, you can't really look as you're driving there, but if you go slow,
You shouldn't,
look at the back.
shouldn't look.
This
Yeah.
is- Pardon?
Shouldn't look going around the corner.
So, I took this by leaning out the window of the car going around the corner. Here's the ice house again. I love that little ice house. I took this picture of the Huffmeister ice house. Back to Mike's cows up up on Town Street. Any comments you wanna make about that, Mike?
No, I'm not sure that's,
Do your cows have names, like some people named all their cows, like Daisy and Sally, and so,
we did have two, yes, we did have names.
you had names for all of them?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they felt better about that.
And you could always tell, they were just so happy when you addressed them by name.
What was the commercial with the contented cows from Carnation, was it? Contented cows. So I'm glad your cows were all contented. They look pretty good here. And here. Okay. Now we're back out in the field. I don't know who this is. Somebody was in, I had a name at one time, but this was very typical, a two-horse hitch, of course. To pull either a cutter or a wagon, or pull some kids around town. Now, I got talking about Devon cows. You ever heard of Devon cattle? I never knew a thing about Devon cows when I did this project. I knew all about Holsteins and Guernseys and other things. Devon cattle are quite an interesting breed. And this is from a picture, if you can read it at the top, of the Northern Farmer. The Northern Farmer was a publication in Clinton, New York in the 1850s and 60s. Believe it or not, that was circulated around the Northeast. And they had a big article about Devon cattle. Here's a picture of one. Devon cattle are sort of unique because they're sturdy like oxen, but they also were milk and also for food. So they had sort of all three things, some better than others, and there's still Devon cattle around today. Here's a better picture of one. Anyhow, I'll stop saying that. And the farm up on the corner of Peck Road and 12B, just before the Brubaker place on the right there, they have some Devon cattle up there. And you don't see them up in the woods most of the time. You never see them. And I say never. Anybody know what I'm talking
They're
about?
down now.
Yes.
They're
Have you
down
seen
now.
them?
They're down now. I
They
saw them
are?
on Friday. I
I've never
smiled
seen
and waved to them.
Do they lay back?
They're in the lower field now.
But they don't milk them, I don't believe. They just have them, they probably slaughtered them, I imagine. I don't know for sure. But they were quite big back in the 1840s and 50s, these Devon cattle, because they could be like an ox away and pull a cart or something, and they could be milked and also slaughtered for food. Okay, we have the Caledonia farm implement situation, which is getting huge. Every time I go by, there's more stuff out there. I can't believe they have such a big inventory, but I hope they sell it all. My gosh, they have a huge inventory now. But George Marsh, I'm glad we have some relatives here, had a place up on the corner of Kellogg and Route 12. Here's a picture of a Massey, was it Massey Harris? Massey Ferguson? Harris, yeah. Getting gas at the pumps at George's Shell station. Was it Shell back that time? Was it always Shell oil?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so this is looking, the hills in the back left here would be the West Hills, so you're looking sort of west in this. So he was in operation for many years, and then he had a major fire. So who was operating at the fire? Do you know?
1988.
88? 88, there was a warm night in July, it burned, the garage burned down. And now the contractor has a pole building that sits back quite a few feet from the road. But there were other implement dealers besides Caledonia. At one time, Colley's, which is now the pizza place out on the Park Road, he sold Ford tractors, or Ferguson tractors, I think. And a fellow over at Clark Mills used to sell on Clinton Street, and Clark Mills on the left as you go in there, sold tractors too. This is a very successful family business that's been going since the 50s. And I think since I took this picture, it's expanded a bit, particularly towards Franklin Ave. In the back there, they bought the village barn and so forth. So, in addition to tractor dealers, we had feed dealers too. This is Moses Cronk Feed. Does anybody recognize the building?
Yes.
Sure, you all do. It's the GLF, right? No, it's the Agway. It's got all three. It's Moses Cronk and GLF and then Agway. It's right down there. Okay. The cupola up on top is gone. We had a few parts of that ironwork downstairs years ago, I'm not sure if it's still there. Well, this was where they got their grist ground and they picked up their supplies. We also had dairies. You may remember Ken Crane.
Yes.
This was, you might have seen the show, Bill Luther does a nice show about Crane Dairy, and he did that here several times. So Crane had a farm up on Campus Road where the golf course is at Hamilton College right now. Just beyond the last hole was the Crane factory, or not factory, but where they got the milk and processed it and pasteurized it and so forth. That's been gone for 50, 60 years. I'm not sure the exact date it ended. But Crane Dairy was one of the dairies. We also mentioned the Bonnie Gray Dairy up on Chestnut Street and the Chris Dairy up on, which became Chris Dairy. There were creameries back then. This was a Kirkland Creamery. I never knew the difference between a condensery and a creamery. There used to be Deansville had a condensery, but Kirkland had a creamery, so I'm not sure if they took the water out or what they did, but anyhow, that's an old picture. Here's another picture when Crane Dairy was down on Franklin Ave, and they had a little snack bar. Anybody recall that? If you recall that, you're getting old. I'd say the early 60s. This is before, there used to be before the round back in the corner came in about 1976 or so, I'd say. It was a Homestead Savings and Loan, remember that?
Yes.
And then to the left of that was, there was no Kinney's Drugs, there was no credit union at that time, and so forth. So that was houses, where there were homes on Franklin Ave, if you can believe it. And there was also a garage there. They used to sell Charlie's Chips. Remember Charlie's Chips? There was a distributor of Charlie's Chips, and then there was a guy that sold Henry J. Remember the old Henry J. automobile? There was a little shoulder there for Henry J. cars. Frazier and Kaiser and Henry J. cars. Obviously all gone now. So there was a Dodge dealer down there. Where Kinney's was a Dodge dealer about 20 years ago. What was that name?
Tobin.
Dodge?
Tobin.
That's right. So Franklin Ave has really changed in characters as a housing area. Now it's all commercial. Here's another shot back way on the side towards Shenango Ave. And again, Hemmons up in Deansboro had what they call condensed milk. We also had cider mills. We probably the only cider mill, one of the few left in this area, and on Elm Street. Also over on Kirkland Ave, we had a processing plant. It's now basically George's Nursery, but it used to be the Stipville Canning Company. How about that? Now, I bet nobody here knew that, right? Now you know that. We're going to do a trivia quiz when we get done here. Well, this is the same grounds. This is where they sell flowers in the summer. Are y'all with me now? Yeah. Okay. Well, back years ago, it was like a pea winery. The farmers would take their peas there. They go through. I'm not sure how they did it, but they would take their peas and process them, and then they ship them out in big trucks. But they also did canning there at one time. So, okay, I'm moving now to. I used to live on Mulberry Street. I had two barns, so I'm doing some village barns, okay? There's not just barns in the external area, there are barns in the village. Some of you who live here may have a barn. I had lived at one Mulberry for 80 years, and these are my two barns. My parents' two barns. Now, the mystery is I never knew there were two stalls in each of these barns. But we had no pasture down there. So I don't know why they put stalls in barns unless they had some livestock, But there were stalls. But there's no place to let a horse out or a cow. Okay, here's a sad scene, which is nothing local, but I thought you might appreciate that. But unfortunately, many barns do burn. And here's a big conflagration someplace, it doesn't matter where. So this ends my slides from 15 years ago, but don't go. I rode around in my car Thursday and took some more pictures. So I only have 2 more hours of pictures to show you. You have to go to the bathroom and go get that. I took this picture up to see how farming has changed and how farmland has been, the use of farmland is different. Now, this picture looks kind of chipped, doesn't it? I was not drinking that day. Well, I said, that looks terrible, so what I did, I took another picture, so there, how's that? This is up on Brimfield Street. This is owned by, well, it used to be owned by Hank Richer. I'm not sure who owns it now. But they put a cell phone tower in the middle of the cornfield, right across from Dawes Ave. You know where that is? So this is what's happening to the farming areas. They're becoming cell towers and houses and other things. So this is a nice straight picture of a nice, I don't know if Richer family still owns that or not. Does anybody know who owns that now? This is, I showed you pictures of the Hofmeister farm. Did you, could I drink this water?
It's your water.
Is it
It's
water?
for you. I tried mine.
It's cold, I'm getting a little hoarse. Ah, it tastes good. Okay. I showed you pictures of the ice house up on the Hofmeister farm. Here's what's left of the Hofmeister farm. A silo and a little building. I'm not sure if that was a milk house or what. That's all that's left up on Brimfield Street at the farm. And here again is the ice house. I love this ice house. Okay. What else has changed the rural landscape? Here we have Spring Farm Cares. Bonnie Jones Reynolds. I remember Bonnie when she was Bonnie Jones years ago. And she now has this sanctuary for various animals. I'm not sure what different varieties she has now, but there are some horses out in the field, and I know they used to have a lot of cats and dogs, and I'm not sure what they have now otherwise. But this was a farm. Her father, Harwood Jones, had this farm for years, right? And then he started driving a school bus, and he sort of was one of the first in the 50s to sort of get away from milk, I believe. But this is what happens to the rural area. It goes from dairy farming to a sanctuary for animals. Very noble. But what else happens to farm area? They build houses. Can you imagine building houses on farmland? This is up on Fountain Street. There's one or two stories, they're all one-story ranch houses up just beyond Martin Road on the right. You know, wonderful for people to live on, but they're taking all the farmland to build houses or put the cell towers or what have you. So now you should realize there's still some farming that goes on in the town of Kirkland. Here's a farm field up off the Martin Road. Martin Road's off Fountain Street. Just they up the last hill there on the right. And they just got the corners. You can see there's just stubble there in the field. That's looking sort of southwest or southeast. So they still use some of the farmland. Some of the farmers rent their lands to big farmers. That's the whole trend today. I know there's some beautiful farms. If you want to take a ride someday, in the town of Marshall, just south of us, between us and Waterville, there's some beautiful farms like Brule Road and some of those roads over there. And some of those farmers are renting in the town of Kirkland now. And I don't know, I see Breimer's here. You renting anything up at Brimfield Street anymore, Breimer?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So the big farmers from outside the town are renting in the town and they're raising their crops, which is wonderful. The farmland's being used. It's not all being turned into homes and cell towers, but it's certainly being productive, and that's wonderful to have that being used. Here's up on Martin Road also. I don't go up there too much, but I was amazed how these beautiful new homes on Martin Road, and also South Street, they're about 80 miles in from the road, and they got a huge front yard, and the houses must be at least $600,000-$700,000. And here's one that is right behind the cornfield here. So they're beautiful homes, but they must like to cut grass up there because they got huge yards. They all have riding mowers. I'm sure they sit there, they go back and forth. But anyhow, this is up at Martin Road. There's a cornfield in the front yard and their big house. And here's another example of some of the farms. Now, I found some real cows in my little trip around the town of Kirkland Thursday. This is up at the Ford farm on Skyline. Was it Tyler Ford, I think his name is? This is one of the few farms remaining that are producing products. These are some real cows eating some hay from a wagon there, which you can't really see too well, but that's going on. It sits between Champion Road and Reservoir Road, I think, yeah. So it's right off Skyline. It's a big farm right there. It's right around the corner from the Champions farm. So this is one of the few. There are 4 farms producing milk in town of Kirkland right now. 4 farms. What was the data I had before? 427 or something? I don't know. Fantastic how the number of farms producing milk has decreased so significantly. Okay, and this same Ford farm, this shows you how they don't need silos anymore. All these big silos were put up 30 years ago, and now nobody uses them. They all put their stuff in this cellophane, this big white, that big white row you see there is a big plastic bag. Is there a name for that type of storage, Mike?
They're called ad bags.
What? What's the?
An ad bag. Ad bag.
Tootsie Roll.
They somehow blow the chopped up corn into these things, right?
Yeah.
So this is one of the few producing farms in the town right up there. And I came down Reservoir Road. It was a beautiful sunny day. I said, "What a beautiful view!" So I thought I'd take a picture of you for you people to look at here. And, this is from I'm coming down Reservoir Road. If you haven't been down Reservoir Road recently, on a nice day, it's worth a trip. You see I'm not sure if your farm is in it or not, but I'm sure you see Post Street and Fountain Street there in the distance. It's very small, so you can't figure it out. But Paris Hill would be up on the top there, maybe Stone Hill or Red Hill Road, I'm not really sure. But it's basically looking east off Reservoir Road. Beautiful view. On a fall day when the leaves are turned, it would be a very nice trip. This is sort of towards Utica off Reservoir Road. It's more of the same. But things are changing in the rural area. Guess what's happening? Here's a foundation on Reservoir Road. Another lot's been sold. Another farm has been subdivided again. And here a person's got a cellar up. So our rural area is turning to a residential area. And I know it is because this slide is the septic tank. It's sitting there ready to be put in the ground. Everybody's seen septic tanks, right? Like this? Yeah, you've got the small section there, okay. Okay, let me summarize a little bit here. It's a sad story, really. I enjoy telling you this story, but it's a sad story. Very sad how towns, and we're just one example, we're just one of many, have changed so much from 200 years ago. And what will the next 200 years bring, I have no idea. But we now have 4 farms that produce milk. The Ford farm up on Skyline, the Champion farm, which we'll see in a minute. And then there's 2 on Deesville Road, the former Claude Hinman farm, which is the Brewbakers. They're a Mennonite family. And the former Roberts farm across the Deesville Cemetery. And I couldn't find out who the owner of that is now. Does anybody know who owns that farm now? Okay, so it's a farm right across the Deesville Cemetery. They're producing milk too, I understand. It was the former Roberts farm. So these are the ones that are producing milk compared to what it was 185 what it was years ago. And here's a shot from up on Dudley Road. I don't know if you can see it or not. You see that white line up on the hill there? That's the Champion Farm. It's up on Champion Road. Can you make it out in the back? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, it's a pretty good picture. And that's, across the Riscony Creek. So I spent a cold, not a whole day, but about half a day 3 years ago in January 1st, up on the Champion Farm, and they took me around, and I was really impressed by their operation. And I'm going to show you some pictures of their operation. They don't have, they have these big barns, and with the cows there eating away. And this is just to give you an idea how long that barn was. They all feed. They can use the heavy equipment to clean out the inside there, and bring more food in, more feed in, and so forth. So it's really changed from the days when they had 10 or 12 cows in a little barn up on Deesville Road, They have these big tanks in the front of the barn, near the parlor. here's some of the crew. And they were filling this, you see some milk trucks that are just, one chassis, they're not tractor trailers, but they load these big trailers, then a tractor comes and takes it away to the milk processing plant. So when it's backed up, they're waiting to be loaded. And that just about wraps it up, folks. Welcome. Any corrections? Any questions? And I'll try my best. So what do you yeah.
When did the milk station first start?
When did what start?
The milk station down on Dawes Ave. Right along, I guess, the railroad tracks.
Not Dawes Ave. Dawes Ave was up on Kellogg.
Not Dawes Ave, what's the one that runs across from the high school?
Oh, Shenango.
Shenango Ave, yeah. The other side, yeah.
Well, there was a milk station. See, the railroad went through right. The Shenango Ave was the canal, just to give you some local history, which we got time, I guess. The Shenango Canal came through town in 1836 from Utica to Binghamton, right down what's now Shenango Ave. Right parallel to it, in 1857 came the railroad. So we had the railroad and the canal parallel, they're about 20 feet apart for many years. There was a milk station where the Clinton House apartments are today. The tracks are right through that area. They also cross Taylor Ave, the next street down, and so forth on the way to Utica. Well, there was a milk station down in that area on the north side of the railroad in the 1910, 1920 period. And I don't know if that was the first one in the town or not, but there was that condensery over in Kirkland. I showed you a picture of the creamery. So they did develop, and of course the big one in Clinton was the one down on Shenango Ave South. Shenango Ave South, one of our big residential village areas, right? Has now the Kirkland, or the Milk House Apartments. Is that thing called Milk House, or just everybody know what I'm talking about? Well, that was developed about 30 years ago into apartments. They had been vacant for years. That was originally was the Queensboro Dairy Company, Queensboro. Back in the 50s, before the days of this big bulk tanks and everything, the farmer would put his milk in a 50-gallon can, load it on his trucks, or on his truck, load half a dozen, whatever, come to Queensboro, or to the condenser up in Deesboro, or whatever, the various places, and they dump into a big tank, and they would process them. Well, this happened until 1957. In 1957, the railroad used to be how they shipped the milk out. And we were, we consider part of the New York City milk shed up here. They call this area the New York City milk shed. Milk from this area went to New York City for the most part. When the train stopped, they went through these big tractor trailer trucks, like you saw in the picture. That was, they now were milk in the process of being processed. So they were then taken down to New York by truck after the train stopped. Queensboro operated into the 1960s. I don't know the exact year it stopped, but by 1970 they were out of business. They made it into apartments in this. So they're vacant for about 10 years down there, and then they made it to apartments maybe in 1975 or that period. So to answer your question, there were milk stations, and like the ones at Queensboro, and the condensery and the creamery, but as with everything else, the small operations became big operations and owned by people who weren't really local people anymore. So we had milk stations, but no more. Today they probably take their milk down to Shabani down in Edmonston,
A lot of it goes up to Hood. And
Where?
To Hood, the Hood plant in Nida.
What, up on Route 5 in Oneida?
Yeah.
You still on the board?
No, I'm,
Okay.
once I.
Well, if you got any complaints about like milk, he's in charge of the medicine co-op up there in Oneida Castle, right?
Yeah, I was, but once I sold my cows, I was history as far as.
Okay. Any other questions?
I got a question for you.
Yeah, Zach.
On the Chris farm, that was my grandfather. He actually died on this day a couple of years ago. So it's actually kind of a nice little thing here. But before he was a farmer, he did ice. But before that, at his little area Can you tell us a little bit about the golf course that was there?
The golf course on St. Mary's,
Yeah.
there was no golf course on St.
There
Mary's.
was something around.
Okay, I'll tell you about it.
Farm area, yeah.
Don't argue with me. Don't argue. Yes, for about 3-4 years in the 1910 period, there was the Casa Vista Golf Course on South Street at the top of St. Mary's. If you were up St. Mary's, you'd have to turn left or right. There was like an 8 or 9 hole golf course there for a brief time in the 1910 to 15 period. And it had a funny Casa Vista or something. I wrote an article about that years ago.
Mhm.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
My grandfather talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
There used to be some,
I'm not sure it was, I don't think it was 18 hole, it might have been 9 hole,
Yeah.
if they were lucky. Anything else? Any other comments? What do you think of this program?